Welcome to the Igniting the CEO Within podcast, where we interview successful high-level professionals to discover lessons they've learned throughout their career that can help ignite that CEO within you. I'm Mark McFatridge, and I'll be your host for the next 15 minutes or so. Our show is sponsored by Quaid, a nationwide community of CEOs and entrepreneurs. Quaid has developed Launchpad, which offers an opportunity for experienced executive coaches and strategic advisors to become licensed circle directors. After completing the Launchpad program, you'll lead your own peer advisory circles, helping other CEOs and entrepreneurs excel in their professional and personal lives while providing a community of support, accountability, and challenge. If you'd like to learn more, visit quaidcircle.com. On our show today, I'm so lucky to have Jennie Sutherland. She's the founder and strategic advisor at JennieSuth in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Jennie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. Very excited to be here today.
Hey, I'm just going to jump into it. All right. You have had a really cool career. You've been exposed to a bunch of different leaders. You've worked with all kinds of leaders in companies, big, small, all in between. If you started to look at the leadership attributes that separate some of the great leaders that you've worked with or for from maybe some folks who could use some improvement in their leadership abilities, if you had any insight, what would one or two things be that kind of separates the really good from the folks who need some improvement?
That's a great question, Mark. It really is about clarity. And
Mm,
that is really how I'm centering my work around is reducing that complexity. Clarity in roles, clarity in decisions, clarity in accountability and ownership, making sure that everybody knows what does good look like and
yeah.
what decision are we actually solving. And so once you have those answers firm and really come down from the leader, you do see that progress follow and the momentum really pick up.
Yeah, I like that. I think sometimes we make it a little bit more difficult than it should be, right? And I love your focus on clarity. And in my mind, a CEO or a business owner or entrepreneur really has only a couple of roles, right? One is to set that vision of where the company is going to go, so clarity of where we're going. It's to clear the pathways for their teammates to be successful, and then three, it's to share the role and the responsibility that each of them are going to play. So I agree with you. It is all about that clarity piece. How do you help people get that clarity? Because from a lot of what you do, it's seemingly think that marketing and advertising is a silo, and it's not. It's got to be incorporated in the entire strategic plan of the organization, right?
It really does. And marketing is at the forefront of that customer insight, competition, what's going on in the marketplace and trends, but helping leaders really navigate where are they getting stuck. And
Mm,
sometimes they don't even realize it. Starting out with what's working, what's not working. Some of the areas they might be stuck are endless meetings that go nowhere. Data is flowing, but there aren't really any actionable insights. We talked about the roles not being clear and a lot of conflicting priorities. When you
mm.
have several leaders with their own ideas of priorities, that's where progress really stalls.
So how do we break that up? What does that look like as you're starting to lead people down that path of developing clarity? How do you get there?
That's a really good question. So I've seen in organizations, again, those conflicting priorities, there's not truly one North Star. And so
Mhm.
really getting to the point of what decision are we truly meaning to make? Is this a discussion or is this a decision when you go into a meeting? And what does good look like? And so when you have those conflicting goals and conflicting metrics, that just creates havoc. And you have a very confusing dashboard with many different KPIs that nobody really knows what are the core things that we're going after. So again, getting it back to that one North Star,
Mhm.
that one strategic lens in which we are focusing all of our effort.
Yeah, I like that. One of the things I'm going to tag on, and maybe you meant to go this way, maybe you didn't, but I'd like to dive into it a little bit of what does good look like. And I've been part of organizations who will say that something is excellent when it's really only good. And that gets confusing as well, right? Because excellence is excellent, right? And good is good, and you can't conflict there. You can't confuse the two of them, because again, I think it starts to block that clarity piece. So that how do you help define not only what good is, but what is excellent, and let's make sure we're calling excellent excellent and good good.
That's a great question. Well, from a process perspective, good and excellent can be as little as minimizing frustration, less meetings, better output, enabled project management. It could be better input. As we know, better input equals better output. So making sure that you're having a really tight brief if you're briefing your agency, and then the creative process can go back. Everything can go back to the brief to make sure that we're on strategy, but really minimizing that unnecessary stress. And then retention. How are the numbers looking? Are people leaving? People don't leave work; they leave the manager, as we hear so often.
Yep. Yep, for sure. So when you start working with a company, what's the first I'm going to ask it slightly differently. How do you determine you get plenty of opportunities to work with companies. How do you decide who you're going to work with? Like cuz there are some people that are just messed up that you're like no way, right? Like how do you start to figure out who you want to work with?
That's a great question. You have to really dig in with a couple opening questions in the intake to understand, are they open to change?
Mhm.
Do they see a vision in which their opinion might be something that can be pivoted, that can be changed a little bit? Or are they just perhaps stuck in some of the old ways of thinking? And if you can see that there is an openness to change and innovation, that is a great client that you want to work with. You also want to make sure that they've got good partnerships that you can lean on and ask questions to as well. So, can we bounce things off of an opposing side to really get to that what's working, what's not working, and to find the gap and the misalignment between those truths? Because somewhere in there is that truth
Yeah.
and a nugget that you can work with.
Well, and again, I think it always goes back to that North Star like you've been talking about, right? If they don't have that and they're unwilling to define it, that's just a recipe for disaster, and that's no fun.
That's right.
Yeah. So being able to help people identify their North Star, what goes into that for you from your standpoint when you start to work with an organization and a leader and they have some good ideas, but they just haven't put the stake in the ground of this is who we are, this is where we're going. What does it look like with working with you to help them identify that?
Yeah, I like to say that it all starts with purpose and making sure that there's a very strong purpose and really getting to the why of that. Why are we in business? Asking again, why? Why? When you distill that down, you truly get to the essential purpose of what a company is about and their core values. But more importantly, we don't want to talk from an us perspective. We want to really lean into what the consumer wants. So, really digging into the market research, the qualitative, the quantitative, any focus group information, even just walking around if it's a physical store or looking online if it's a
Mhm.
digital presence. What are the customers saying? Going on to Reddit and really understanding what does that behavior look like? Because once you go to that consumer lens, that's where that elevation continues and that's where the momentum begins. That's where we start to get some of those really meaty nuggets of what are we in the business for, and more importantly, what demand are we meeting with our consumers?
What thank you. What happens when somebody is what's it look like when you're having that conversation and somebody is like, "This is where we need to go," and you're like, "The data says no. This is where we need to go." What are those conversations look like?
Well, that always happens in any conversation that we have, both personally and in a business function. I like to start out with help me understand, walk me through that. Not challenging assumptions, but really trying to get to the meat of it. I also challenge the opposite. So if we were to look at it from the opposite side, what would that look like? And that's a really tough place to get to, but it brings new perspectives. And sometimes that discernment comes through where there is a block and it might not be the best fit. And so I'll be very honest and say, hey, you know what? I've got a colleague that might be, you might want to talk to, and there might be some opportunities for you to talk through, or we might minimize the scale of the approach and work on one specific segment versus the entire scope.
Yeah. Have you seen, in your work, do you see that a lot? I mean, is that something that's pretty typical of, "Hey"
No, not
no.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, it depends on the sector, obviously, because I've worked both in consumer, commercial, I've worked with higher ed, I've worked with global agencies, and so a lot of different, personalities and a lot of the actual industries, but it all comes down to if they're calling me and wanting to talk to me or if we're meeting at an event, it's because they're really curious, and
Hmm.
if I see that spark of curiosity and innovation, they're willing to test, they're willing to pilot, they're willing to explore their own thinking, you know that's a good fit.
Yeah. I love that, yeah, that the curiosity component of it, right? There's the childlike curiosity, I think is a really cool thing. And you started to say, why, like a 4-year old, right? And that's to me, that's one of the things that makes a great leader too, right? Is to continually ask why. Why are we doing that? Why does this make sense? Does it align with who we are and where we're going, where we want to go?
You're absolutely right. An old agency that I worked at, GST&M, one of their core values was restlessness, and I loved that because that
Oh,
absolutely embodied how you need to think about that. Now, on the flip side, that doesn't mean we need to get to paralysis analysis, right?
yeah,
And going down the path of looking and repeating conversations that we've had. That's where we get into those areas that we're stuck. And so, moving the needle to say, well, we've got 80% of the information using the 80/20 rule and
yep.
saying, this is a good bet. Let's go out and test it. Let's go pilot it, like I said before. And let's, again, move towards that more momentum.
Yeah, I use the phrase directionally correct, right?
Yes,
Do we have enough information to be
absolutely.
directionally correct? If so, let's go, right?
Yes, let's go. Green
I
light.
I do love the restlessness, right? And that's one I haven't heard, and I really like that thought. And then and as you said, the other cautionary tale of that is you can't be wishy-washy either, right? Like you can't uh, you can't implement something and then 30 days later make a change here and make it, be
Yes.
the jelly of the month club, right? That makes it really challenging for everybody because they start to lose that clarity that we started talking about up front.
That's exactly it, and that's where that, decision drag comes into play, and maybe we aren't firm on what decision we're making, and the teams feel that too. They see the circular conversations. They have that frustration when that ownership isn't defined, when that priorities are competing, and when they realize that their teams are not aligned, that's, again, when they really get stuck, and we need to pull the team out and reset.
Yeah, that's great. This has been amazing. When you start to think back, and we'll start to rewind this up a little bit, but when you start to think back, what is one thing from your experiences that you wish 21-year-old Jenny knew that you know now?
That is an excellent question. What I wish I knew then, I I would tell that person again, clarity is the most important thing. And I would work with managers to really understand roles. I think at that time, especially when you're starting in the advertising industry, you work very hard. It's you work hard and play hard. It's
Right.
3 a.m. nights, and at that time, running off to the printer and running off to FedEx to make sure that we got something in the mail, and it was the right place at that time. I wish I would have had that visibility to say, no, there are some boundaries, and also there's better ways of doing things.
Hmm.
There are ways to get that alignment, and I felt the hierarchy at that time, which I just again didn't have that exposure. But
Yeah.
there might have been ways to have those conversations with my peers, with some of the other managers, to just really understand, hey, am I actually doing somebody else's role? And did I just inherit that and not get a promotion? So giving that visibility that there are different ways of working. And I know a lot has changed even in even in the couple of decades, but saying there are other ways to get that clarity.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think we all learn that over time, right? Of there is a way to raise up a question, right? And when you're not viewed as challenging authority, but still you're challenging authority, right? I mean, there are ways to do that and communicate that, but it takes time to figure that out. Yeah,
It really does, and for me, it was actually working in different industries. I had started out on the agency side, and then I wanted to peek past the curtain and see what it looked like on the client side, and guess what? It was no more clear, no more structured. a lot of the same problems. But at that time, I had the ability and had empathy on both sides. So I knew exactly what the agency's frustrations were. And then I could understand what the client's frustrations were. And so I could really match and understand, okay, again, better input equals better output. If it's a project management problem, what do we need? Is it might not just be talent and capabilities, it might
Yeah,
be a tool problem, might be a process problem. And so again, seeing at that larger scope helped me really elevate my capability to contribute at the table.
that's awesome. Hey, thank you so much for sharing your insights and all the things that you're doing. Do me a favor, would you share with our audience what a typical engagement looks like with you and share how people can get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mark. I've
Yeah.
absolutely loved talking to you. So, my information can be found at JennieSuth.com. I am starting out this business, so it is very much in its infancy. However, I've been engaging as a consultant for the past year and more or less over the past 20 years. A typical engagement will be just having a quick chat, talking about very high level what are some of the constraints? What are some of the problems that you're seeing? Where are some of the opportunities? And I've got some questions in that intake form that really get to that because it might not be as obvious at the front. And then we get into a 60 or 90-minute session and we really work through what's working, what's not working. And within 48 hours, I give a synopsis, an executive brief that really talks through, okay, this is what I heard, and here are some of the opportunities outlined.
That's cool. That's awesome. And then website, LinkedIn, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Jennie Suth is JennieSuth.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn as Jennie Sutherland. And on that page, you'll also see a lot of the proud brands that I've worked with, which has been really great to think about over the past years of all the different folks that I've been able to learn from and emulate and also share this knowledge on.
Very cool. Well, congratulations and thanks for sharing all your stuff today. I appreciate you.
Likewise. Thanks, Mark.
All right, y'all. I did it again. We identified another great leader, another great experience that was willing to share with us. Hope you took a lot away from this conversation. I sure did. Just want to remind you as we wrap up that Igniting the CEO Within is sponsored by Quaid, a nationwide community of CEOs and entrepreneurs. Quaid has created Launchpad, which provides an opportunity for experienced executive coaches and strategic advisors to become licensed circle directors and significantly impact the lives of CEOs and entrepreneurs. To find out more, visit quaidcircle.com. Until next time, keep igniting that CEO within you. I'm Mark McFatridge. Thanks for listening.